Yokoso Beeps, it's Oz. Whether you're planning to move to Japan and bring a pet you already have with you, or you're planning to have a pet when you come to Japan, this video is for you. So this video is actually a request from one of my viewers named Gina. She's going to be moving to Japan next year with her pet, and she wanted me to make this video. Before we begin, I'd also like to just ask anyone who's not subscribed to me yet to please subscribe. I'm almost at 25,000 subscribers, and I hope to reach that by the end of the year. Also, subscribe to my newsletter. It's free, and it comes out once a month. In that newsletter, I answer questions of the month, so if you have any questions about Japan or life in Japan, I can answer those. It also has videos that are not available on YouTube and links to free articles about the dark side of Japan. The link for the newsletter is in the information section. First of all, if you're coming to Japan only for a short amount of time, like a tourist or just a short-term visitor, I don't recommend going through with bringing your pet to Japan. The tests, the paperwork, and the quarantine would make it hard for you to bring your pet during a vacation. This video is more for people who are planning to come to Japan and bring a pet with them, and they're planning to stay in Japan for work or for study or for a long term. So in this video, I'll be dealing with mostly cats and dogs. For other types of pets, you should definitely check out the Ministry of Forestry and Fisheries and Agriculture. I'll also leave a link to that government agency in the information section below. Also, that website is really important because not only does it talk about the rules and regulations of bringing pets into Japan and also different kinds of pets, but it also has the forms that you can download that you'll need, the paperwork you'll need to send to get your pet to come to Japan. So the first part of the video, I'm going to be talking about how to actually bring your pets into Japan, all the things required, the paperwork and the tests and all that stuff. The next part of the video will be once your pet is actually in Japan, different things about life in Japan and what you should know about having a pet in Japan. So Japan is very strict when it comes to allowing pets or animals into Japan. So the first thing you need to know is if you're part of the non-designated list or designated list of countries. The designated list is very small. It includes Iceland, New Zealand, Guam, Hawaii, Australia, and Fiji. So if you're part of one of those countries, the process is much easier for you. So the first thing you need to do is get your pet microchipped and make sure that your pet has been in your country for more than 6 months. You have to fill out a form giving notice to Japan that you'll be coming at least 40 days before you arrive. Then Japan sends you an approval notice. Then 10 days before you leave your country, you have to do a final check with your vet. Just make sure your dog or your cat is in good health. The vet will give you a certificate that's been approved by the government saying that your pet is healthy, doesn't have rabies, and is okay to travel to Japan. And that's it. The pet arrives at the airport. You go to the quarantine services. They do a final check, make sure your paperwork's in order, and make sure your dog or cat is healthy, and then they release you. Now, if you're not part of those designated countries, you're part of the non-designated countries, which is almost every other country, and it's a lot more difficult and more expensive. So I brought my dog, Maple, from Canada, and Canada is part of the non-designated countries, so I had to go through a very long and tough process. So just a warning, if you are planning to bring your pet, definitely start early. The earlier you prepare and plan for it, the easier it's going to be. So the first thing you need to do is get your pet microchipped. Then they have to get their first rabies shot. Now, even if they already have a rabies shot, if you've given them a rabies shot and it's still valid, you still have to get the rabies shot after the microchipping. Then a month later, you have to get your second rabies shot. Now, the next step is the hard part. You have to get the rabies antibody test. This test is where they take the dog or the cat's blood and they send it off to a special designated medical site to check for whatever they're checking for. I think it's called a titer test. Problem with that is in North America, for example, there's only one location. There's only a few locations around the world. So there's no locations in Canada and there's only one location in America in Kansas. So you go to the vet, they take the blood, and then they send it to Kansas, and you have to wait for the results. Of course, going to the vet cost me money each time, about $100 or whatever, but I believe the titer test was pretty expensive. I can't remember because it was 10 years ago. So probably the prices have changed, but it was probably around $700 or $800, maybe not that much, maybe about $500. And from the day that the vet takes the blood from your pet, so for example, when Maple got his titer test and it got sent off to Kansas, from the day they took the blood is day 0. From that day to 180 days, so 6 months later, is the quarantine period for your pet, where of course they're staying with you, but they can't leave the country or they can't go to Japan until those 6 months have passed. I think I got my results from Kansas within a month or so, and everything was good. Next, once you've got your results and everything's good and you know you have to wait 6 months, then you start planning when you're actually going to be coming to Japan. And this is important because you have to give 40 days or more notice of when you're going to arrive. You can fax them, you can mail them, or you can send them an email. So you have to be careful. You have to make sure that you give them the exact day that you arrive, the flight arrives, because if you're a day early or a day late, it might not be valid. Also, not all airports in Japan have services for cats and dogs, so you should make sure on that website that I told you about that the place you're flying to is one of the approved places where pets can come in for quarantine checks. Most of the major airports like Tokyo, Osaka, and Sapporo and stuff are included, so you should be fine. And also when you book your flight, of course you need to book a flight for your pet as well, depending on the airline. It could be anywhere from $100 to $500, and depending on the size of your pet, it'll be either carry-on or in the luggage area. So when you're booking a flight, definitely see which flights are better for your pets. Same as designated sites, 10 days before you leave your country, you should get another check, a final check at the vet. And at that visit, you will get the certificate from the government that approves that your dog or cat is safe to travel, and they'll give you a certificate. One thing I should have mentioned before is before you do anything, make sure the vet that you're using is one that's willing to help you with this whole process and is approved to help you with this process. Otherwise, you're going to have to find a government-approved vet because they're the only ones that can get the government-certified certificates. So once everything's good and you get on the plane and you fly, finally, when you arrive at the airport, just like with the designated countries, you go to the animal quarantine services. They will check all the paperwork, microchipping, make sure the tests are done, and the timing and the dates of everything is approved. And they will also do a final check on your dog or cat just to make sure they're okay. And they'll release it to you within 12 hours. But in my case, they released Maple within like 5 minutes. They just right away we went to quarantine services. They just like beeped his microchip, checked the paperwork. They saw that he was cool, and they let him go. All right, so let's talk about some stuff about bringing your pet on the plane to Japan. First of all, the crate. Depending on the airline, there are some regulations that you have to check to see if your pet is allowed to be either on carry-on or if they have to be in the luggage section. If they're in carry-on, I'm sure you can just get a regular small either plastic crate or a vinyl crate, especially for cats, and you can just leave them by your feet. As with dogs too, as long as they're small dogs, you can do the same thing. But Maple's 14 kilograms, so he was too big to be carry-on, so he had to be ride in the luggage area. So we had to get a special, not special, but like a official crate that is allowed for travel. And we went to PetSmart. It wasn't that expensive. We got it's like a plastic crate, but it's pretty sturdy. And it even has like stickers that you put on to show that it's safe for traveling for animals. He was in the luggage area for the entire flight, which was about 14 hours. Depending on the airline, the staff will come by every few hours or every hour or so to check on your pet. They're not allowed to open the cage or let the pet out. They're only allowed to fill the water. So they're also not allowed to feed the pet as well. So that'll be one thing you might want to think about. Maybe give some extra food or more food in the crate or before entering the crate, just so your dog or cat is not too hungry. So because they're not going to be allowed of their crate for such a long time, be prepared for a lot of pee and poo inside the crate. Of course, airlines put either like ripped newspapers or shavings or something in there, and if you want to put an extra couple of pet sheets down on the bottom or a towel or something, I would recommend that, because your dog or cat will be having to stay in the crate the whole time, and I'm sure they won't be able to hold it, so there's gonna be pee and poo all over the crate and all over your dog or cat. So because of that, I would recommend don't use a favorite towel or a blanket of your pets, even though that sounds like it would be a good idea, but it will be covered in feces and urine. So unless you are willing to throw it away, I would just use a towel and wet pet sheets that you don't need anymore. And also, when on your carry-on, you should carry wet tissues, a towel, and possibly even like dry shampoo or something like that, because when you get your pet, it's going to be dirty and stinky, and you're going to want to wipe him or her down and maybe put some like shampoo so he or she doesn't smell on the way back to your home in Japan. You have a few options. The first and the easiest option is having someone you know pick you up at the airport. So in my case, when I arrived in Hokkaido, one of my coworkers, her name is Miki, she had a car, so she drove to the airport and she helped me bring Maple from the airport back to Hokkaido to our home. Another option is pet taxis. These are available. I googled some things and I found one called Yako Doghouse, which seemed pretty good. It's not much more expensive than a regular taxi, and you book it ahead of time, and then the taxis are big enough to carry a crate and you and to your destination. The only thing about that is I think they're only in big cities like Tokyo and Osaka and Sapporo and Nagoya and stuff. And even if you're going to be, of course, you're going to be coming into those ports at the airports, but if you live really far away, it might get quite expensive. So I don't know how much it would cost, but that'll be up to you. Getting a taxi, maybe an hour or so, will be really expensive. But it is an option if you're living somewhere in the cities. I've actually never used a specific pet taxi, but one time I needed to take my dog and cat to the vet at the same time, and it was raining, and I didn't want to take my bike, and then a car came, and I asked them, if I have my pets in crates, can I get a kind of guard? And they said okay, and I put both of them in the back seat in the back, and then I drove to the pet hotel, and then he waited for me, and then he drove me back to my home. But like I said, it depends on the cab company and the cab driver and what their rules are for themselves. Some taxi drivers might not want to deal with pets, others might be okay with it. So you just have to kind of call and see if you get lucky or not. The next one is public transportation. Now this one is good if your pets are small and light. As long as they're under 10 kilograms, you should be able to take your dog or cat on public transportation as long as they're in a carry case. Carry case can't be too big, and you have to pay for your pet, but it's like $2 or $3. It's not that expensive. So if you have a small pet, you're going to be very lucky. You'll be able to travel a lot through public transportation in Japan. And the last option is renting a car. If you have a rental car, some companies I know like Budget Rental Car and Nippon Rental Car and Times Rental Car, a lot of them have pet policies and they do allow traveling with pets. Some of them have an extra charge for the pet, and they also say you have to, of course, not let the dog or cat out of the crate. They have to stay in their crate the whole time in the car, and the crate can only be a certain size. So there are some different rules and regulations. If your pet gets free in the car and they end up scratching it or leaving a lot of pet hair around, or it smells really bad, they will charge you a lot of money for the damages. That being said, I'm going to tell you what I do, and then you can decide if that's something that you want to do or you want to stick to the actual regulations. So what I do is, because my pet crate, Maple's pet crate, is pretty big, and Maple is 14 kilograms, so he's also pretty big. There's not a lot of rental services that really cater to Maple. So what I do is I rent the car anyway. I don't mention it. I don't show the dog. I don't bring anything. But what I do is, once I rent the car and I bring it back to my house or whatever, I flatten the back seat. I put a bed sheet over the entire back area, and I put the crate on the bed sheet, and in the crate I put a blanket and a towel, and then I pick Maple up and I put him in, so I don't let him go into the car like stepping on the seats or anything, and then I close the crate. And we drive, and you've probably seen in my videos where like we're going on road trips all the time, he's always in the back seat, and there's a bed sheet. And the good thing is, in Japan, there's a lot of places, rest areas on highways that have little dog runs and pet areas. So I take a break every couple of hours, let him out, let him pee, let him stretch his legs, walk around a bit, and then put him back in the crate. And I've done that maybe over a dozen times. And then when I get home, I take off the pet sheet, and I take Maple and the crate out and the pet sheet out. And then I use a lint roller and I roll up any excess pet hair. And it's been fine all the time. I've never been in trouble. I've never had to pay any damages, and no one's even known that I had a pet in the car, because it's pretty much new and clean, and you can't tell that there's been a pet in the car. So that's the method I use, but I'm not like endorsing it, especially if depending on your pet style. Like my pet Maple is very calm. He cries a little bit, but he doesn't like scratch anything. He doesn't pee or anything or do anything bad in the car. He's pretty used to it. But I don't know your pet. If your pet is the kind of pet who like might like have motion sickness and might puke and might like get the car dirty, or might like pee on the side of the crate and it might leak out or something like that, I don't want to tell you to do it because I don't know your pet. But if your pet is similar to my pet, then maybe that option is better. Or you can go the actual route of contacting the rental companies I mentioned and then telling them you have a pet, and then ensuring that the crate size and the pet size is proper for the rental car regulations. If you're in Japan, there's a lot of places that are good for pets, that are pet friendly. I'll mention locations and options later on in the video, but you'll definitely want to take your dog on adventures and or cat even. Most likely you're going to have a car because a lot of places that are pet friendly don't have a lot of public transportation to get there. So like I mentioned before, one of the best things about driving in Japan with your pet is there's a lot of rest areas along the way on the highway, and most of them have some kind of pet friendly area, a place where you can either like walk your dog, an off-leash park even, a little like zone where they can like relax or get some water or whatever. You can get some snacks or something. So it's a very pet-friendly highway driving system. So you should be fine when you're driving. Now, if you have your own car, you can do whatever you want, and dogs can, ride with you, beside you, or behind you. I think there is some regulations, like you should have your pet attached to some kind of harness or seat belt or something. Looking around in Japan, I've noticed a lot of people, all their dogs are always either in the car seat next to them or actually sitting on their lap while they're driving. I don't know how safe that is, and I don't think if that's legal or not, but I've seen tons of Japanese people do that. I wouldn't recommend it. I would have them maybe have a harness or something in the back seat or on the passenger side, but it's up to you. Since there's actually more pets and more dogs and cats in Japan than there are human children, you can imagine the types of services and the types of things that are available for pets in Japan. There's restaurants, there's cafes, there's trimmers, there's hotels, there's amusement parks, there's like off-leash parks. There's everything you would possibly want for your pet's entertainment. And just like the services, there's also tons of products, jackets and sweaters and shoes and leads and collars and chew toys and snacks and treats, and everything you could possibly want for a dog is here. If you're looking for bigger things, like for bigger dogs or for more bulk, I'd recommend places like Costco or Aeon malls or home centers, kind of like one example is called Cane's. They usually have a big pet center area, and they have bigger beds and bigger bags of food and stuff like that for your pets, or giant cat towers or whatever you want that are available there. But of course, there's also there's a lot of small pet shops in every area, not just big cities, but even in small towns. In my small town, there's around me, within 10 minutes of me, there's at least 4 or 5 pet shops, and all the supermarkets and even convenience stores like 7-Eleven and Family Mart and Lawson's. They all have a pet section where they sell pet products, pet foods and pet toys and pet snacks. So you shouldn't have a trouble finding a pet product. That being said, depending on the size of your dog and depending on the brand of products that your dog is used to or that you prefer, that might not be available in Japan. And since most dogs in Japan are pretty small, most pet shops cater to smaller dogs. So if you have a bigger dog, it might be harder to find some products. If you are extra worried about specific things that your dog wants or needs and you might not be able to find in Japan, first of all, you should try to see if you can find it on Amazon Japan. Because if you can, then they can just deliver it to your house and then you're set. Or you can just buy stuff that you think your dog or cat will like a special collar brand or a special leash or something, and just bring it with you. But if you're looking for like organic treats or imported different snacks and foods, there's tons of shops around. If you go around to the different pet shops, you'll see a lot of them have like imported products from Australia or New Zealand or America or Canada or whatever, and you'll be able to find tons of like chew toys or organic treats or snacks. The last thing I found at Aeon Mall, I was just there last week, and I found kangaroo meat packages for dogs. So yeah, if your dog is into kangaroo meat, Eon Mall pet area is the place to go. Housing is a little bit difficult. If you come to Japan, hopefully you've already figured out where you're going to be staying. You already have an apartment set up, and you've made sure to check that your apartment or your house or whatever is pet friendly. If you're going to be living in a house, then you should have no problem because it's a house and there's no pet policies or anything. You can just bring your pet and you can live with your pet. You're good to go. But unfortunately, there's still a lot of apartments that don't rent to pets. And worse than that, there's a lot of apartments in Japan that don't rent to gaijin or foreigners. So like I said, make sure that first of all, you are allowed to stay in the apartment because you're not Japanese. Some apartment landlords or owners don't want foreigners in their apartment. So if you are allowed to stay, the next thing is to make sure your pet is allowed to stay. And usually some apartment places have something called pet sodan, which means you can maybe talk to the owners and they might let you have a pet depending on the size of your pet, what kind of pet it is and stuff like that. The good thing is because of the population decreasing and a lot of apartments being sitting empty right now, a lot of the owners are willing to allow people who have pets coming in to stay where before they wouldn't have. The thing about staying in a pet apartment, you're gonna have to pay a pet deposit. Where I stayed in my last apartment in Chiba, I had to pay a monthly deposit. So every month it was an extra, I think it was $40 a month each month for pet deposit. Whereas the apartment I stay now, it was just a one-time 1 month's rent worth of deposit for the pets. And depending if your pet is a dog or a cat, the price might change or the deposit might change as well. If you're looking for an apartment, one thing I would do is definitely use the actual apartment services that are in Japan. Some of them are like, one is called Apaman Shop, another one's called Able, and I believe the most famous one that you've probably heard of is called Century 21. And all of these places you can walk in. If you don't speak Japanese, it might be more difficult. But maybe if you call ahead, some branches, some locations have English speaking staff. So if you can get one of these bigger companies, there's more likely somebody who speaks a little bit of English. Because they're Japanese and they're a famous company, they'll be able to contact the actual owners and tell them the situation. Usually because it's a trustworthy company, they will let you stay in the apartment. So that's one good option of finding an apartment. Before that, if you want to kind of get a general idea of what are your chances, I would definitely go to Sumo, not the sport, but SUUMO.jp, I believe, sumo.jp. So we want to, between rental and buying, we want to rental. And then actually the area we want Kanto area. And here's the areas in English, perfect. So let's say we want Tokyo, and we want the actual along the train line, the specific train line we want. And this is awesome. It works well in English. So you can see all the JR Yamanote line and all the different lines. So let's say you want to be on the Yamanote line, which is the big circle green line that's the most popular. You can even choose like which station, or if you want to be all the Yamanote, but that's too big. So let's say you guys really like Meguro station. You can search this condition. And there's 15,000 locations, as you see. Okay, so what we're gonna do is on this page, there's so many different options, but along the side, there's places where you can filter, and that's what we're gonna do. Unfortunately, that's not in English, but the first thing is gonna be rent. So we're gonna say, let's say you wanna pay between 50,000 and 100,000 a month. So we'll do that. That's the important, I guess, and how big you want it. Let's say you want at least 2K, which is about 2 rooms and up to 2 living room, dining, and a kitchen. And I guess how far from the station you want. So let's say within 15 minutes. And here's the most important word, pet sodan, which means they consider pets. So let's do that. And now when you search, that 15,000 turns into 7. So there you go. Meguro Station has 7 places listed here that allow pets. This is 80,000 yen. So let's check it out. Here. Right, so here it is. This is the apartment that's near Meguro Station. It's kind of like an old house apartment kind of thing. There's 14 pictures, so you can see the layout. You can see what it looks like inside. It's kind of old and ghetto. Looks like it's from the 70s. But it's the cheapest in Meguro Station that you're going to find for pets.
and it says 2K, 36 space, how big it is. So if we look here, it has a point, it has pet, it's up to cats 2. So this one is being very specific. You can have 2 cats. You have to give 1 month deposit. So this one doesn't allow dogs, I guess. So you'd have to look through that.
So anyway, once you figure that out, maybe you can print out some of those, make some copies of those places you found. Then you go to the Century 21 or a pawn shop or whatever, and you say, hey, look, these are some of the apartments I've been thinking about. Can you help me find these ones or other ones that are similar to these? And then they'll also help you because they might have listings that are not available online. They have specific listings for their own company. So you might find something, or they might even be able to get the ones that you found if you really liked one of them. The only thing is it gets expensive because if you do deal with like a Century 21 or a pawn shop or something, not only will you have to pay like the 1 month pet deposit, but you also have to give them commission for finding the apartment for a 1 month fee. So that's 2 months right there of rent, plus the other deposit stuff you have to pay as a regular, which is like a 1 or 2 months rent. So you're going to be paying up to like maybe up to half a year's worth of rent in advance as deposits.